Why is she even still alive? That's what I heard the moment I stepped into my son's backyard. The voice cut through the air like a blade, and for a moment I wondered if I had stumbled into someone else's nightmare, but it was mine. The laughter that followed was thin, controlled, almost ritualistic, as if cruelty itself was being rehearsed. My hand clutched the still warm dish of cobbler tighter, but my body didn't tremble. Not yet. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I wasn't supposed to exist in that moment, in their eyes. And that's when the truth struck me. Sometimes families aren't families at all. They are kingdoms, and kingdoms always decide who is useful and who is already dead. You were taught that history's cruelties lived in ancient palaces, in secret councils, in the shadow of forgotten empires. But the truth is darker. The same architecture of exile, the same quiet execution of loyalty, plays out in every backyard, every boardroom, every institution you've ever trusted. And once you hear the hidden script, the language of dismissal, the whispers of erasure, you can never unhear it. This is not just her story. It's ours, and you were never meant to know it. She walked through that backyard like nothing had shattered. Past the string lights, the picnic tables, the frozen smiles. They spoke to her like an afterthought, like a ghost who'd wandered into the living world by mistake. And yet, this is the oldest ritual of power, public silence, private exile. Look closely. This same play has been staged for centuries. Ancient Rome did not always kill its enemies outright. No, it erased them quietly. Their statues smashed, their names scratched from marble, their existence unacknowledged. Damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. And what is a grandmother ignored at her own family's table if not the same decree, carried out in modern clothes? History repeats because it doesn't need to invent new tools. Exile is cheaper than blood. Isolation is cleaner than war. You think you live in a world free from empire, but the empire never ended. It simply moved into your living rooms, your churches, your offices, and your families. Every time someone says, "We didn't know you were coming," with that thin smile, understand that you've just been sentenced. The penalty is invisibility, and invisibility is the most dangerous execution of all. At the table, she sat straight-backed, the cobbler cooling beside her untouched. No one asked her to eat. No one asked her to speak. Children ran past her as though she was air. You think that's just family neglect? No, that's training. Psychological programming perfected through centuries of control. Once you begin to believe you are invisible, you become obedient. Once you accept their silence as truth, you erase yourself before they ever need to. That's how institutions, governments, and bloodlines control, not by force, but by silence. Look deeper. Every cult, every monarchy, every ruling council has always understood the same weapon: isolation. The prisoner alone in his cell, the dissenter stripped of audience, the heretic banned from the sacred hall. The ritual is identical, whether you are in chains or in a folding chair at the edge of a backyard. Because what they want is not your death, not yet. They want your surrender. And here's the secret. Most men surrender long before the blade falls. They surrender the moment no one looks at them. That's why so many kingdoms last longer than any rebellion. They've convinced their victims to erase themselves. That night she went home. She put the empty dish away. She made coffee for one. She didn't rage. She didn't cry. She planned. And this is the place where most stories diverge. Most people break. But the rare few, they begin to awaken. She opened the old documents, the deeds, the financial records, the history of who actually owned what, and she realized something forbidden. She had been the architect of their power all along. This is what you were never supposed to learn. Every empire is built on the blood, sweat, and sacrifice of the loyal, those who believe in family, in nation, in tradition. But when their usefulness ends, those same empires exile the very people who raised them. They convince you that you're a guest at the table you built, and you sit quietly, not realizing that without you, the table doesn't even exist. She looked at the signatures, the numbers, the letter she once wrote, "Because you are my son." It burned, And in that moment, she uncovered the same truth whispered in secret brotherhoods for thousands of years. Power is never given. It is only taken back. So she called someone. Not family, not a friend, but a strategist. An old probate worker who understood the codes of inheritance, the maps of ownership. This is how real resistance begins, not with swords, but with knowledge. She was told, you can't take back the house, but you can deny them everything else. That was the forbidden key, the realization that power is not about what you hold, it's about what you deny others from claiming. This is the part where you must listen closely. Every system you live under, government, religion, corporations, has been designed with one goal, not to give you ownership, but to trick you into signing it away. The paperwork of your silence, the contracts of your obedience. You don't even see the chains because you were taught to call them gifts. But the moment you look at those documents, those agreements, those unspoken contracts, and strike a line through them, you step outside the cage. She drew a line through her son's name, and with that one stroke, she became dangerous. Now ask yourself, whose name in your life have you been too afraid to cross out? She began to bake again, not for them, for herself. This is not about pies. This is about power reclaimed in the smallest acts. Understand this. Empire collapses the moment the slave stops feeding the master, even if it's just flour, sugar, and blueberries. That night she ate alone, but for the first time the food was not an offering. It was possession. And here's where I ask you, yes, you, to prove you're not just another spectator of forbidden history. If you've heard me this far, I want you to write in the comments, the erased will return. Say it twice. Not for me, not for the algorithm, but for yourself. Because this is how men like you build identity in a world designed to strip it away. This is how you anchor yourself in the forbidden brotherhood of those who see through the silence. While others laughed in their houses across the street, while her own bloodline erased her like chalk from a blackboard, she sat steady, the pie cooling at her side. No rage, no begging, just quiet resolve. Because once you stop feeding the empire begins to starve. Days turned to strategies. The locks were changed. The wills were rewritten. The trust documents drafted. Piece by piece, she severed the pipelines that carried her life force into their world. This was not petty revenge. This was repair. And in that repair, she revealed another forbidden truth. Power is not in inheritance, but in redirection. Think of every dynasty that fell not because of war, but because the flow of gold stopped. Think of every secret order that collapsed when its initiates closed their purses. The true battlefield is not the sword, it's the ledger. And she understood this now. By the time they noticed her silence, it was too late. Their kingdom had already been cut from its roots. The lesson here is sharp. The system doesn't care about your love, your loyalty, your tears. It only cares about your signature. Once you revoke that, the system has no weapon left. That's why revolutions never start in the streets. They start in the paperwork drawer of a silent, forgotten soul who decides, enough. But here's the shadow most never face. When you take back your power, they will come knocking. And he did. Her son. Once the boy who clung to her hand, now a man banging on her locked door, demanding explanation. Do you think tyrants roar with fire? No. They whisper with confusion. Mom, please, I just want to talk. That tone, the pleading one, is the oldest trick in the book. It's the empire asking for just one more drop of loyalty, one more signature, one more moment of surrender. But she sat in silence. She let the knock echo, then fade, because she had already seen behind the curtain. She knew this wasn't love. It was possession disguised as concern. The same voice empires always use when their slaves wake up. We're just worried about you. No, they're worried about losing control. This is the moment that separates the awakened from the obedient. Can you sit in silence long enough to let their false concern rot in the air? Can you resist opening the door? Because if you can, then you will understand. Silence is not weakness. Silence is power sharpened into a blade. She walked the rooms of her house one last time, not with sorrow, but with inventory. The curtains, the quilts, the cabinets, each chosen carefully, each a memory. But this wasn't nostalgia. This was war preparation. She marked what would stay, what would go, what would burn. And here's what most men don't realize. Empires are dismantled not with bombs, but with lists. A notepad can be deadlier than an army if the hand holding it has finally awoken. History hides this truth. Do you know why the Vatican feared Martin Luther's pen? Do you know why secret police burned entire libraries? Because knowledge rearranges property, and property rearranges kingdoms. She wasn't just a grandmother anymore. She had become an architect of collapse. And collapse, when it comes, doesn't look like fireworks. It looks like an old woman calmly boxing her baking tins and reassigning her legacy away from those who betrayed her. Understand this well. When the overlooked begin to count their possessions, the empire's countdown has already started. And when the inheritance is denied, history shifts. Always. In the end, she didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't demand apologies from those who erased her. She simply redirected the flow of power. The trust secured, the will revised. The house fated to be liquidated into something that mattered, beyond the reach of her betrayers. And in that act, she became more dangerous than any tyrant imagined, because she had revealed the greatest forbidden truth of all. You cannot be erased if you refuse to erase yourself. Every empire, every bloodline, every secret society that has ever existed has feared this moment, the awakening of the forgotten. Because the forgotten, once they stop begging for recognition, no longer play the game. They set their own terms, and when a man or a woman sets their own terms, the world shifts. Now I ask you, watching this, are you willing to cross the names out? Are you willing to rewrite the ledger of your own existence? Or will you sit at the table of silence, waiting for scraps, pretending you didn't hear the words, "Why is he even still alive?" The erased will return, and when they do, kingdoms fall.